Hello and welcome to the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm your host, Mina Rzouki, and today I'm joined by Andy Brassell. Tancredi Palmeri is meant to be here, but he is Italian, so of course he's running late. But let's get started. Some interesting matches happen. Real Madrid finally have a team, as opposed to what? I'm not sure. People are apparently surprised that Juventus are any good. I guess going undefeated last season meant nothing to most people in punditry. And of course, Barcelona struggled against an Unai Emery-led squad, but they won in the end. Let's start with Spain, because I think that's where all the action started. How are you, Andy?
I'm not bad, thank you. Yourself?
I'm very well, thank you.
Some interesting matches. Dripping with understatement there.
Dripping with understatement.
Some interesting matches.
All right, what was I going to say? It was the best ever Champions League start.
No, the table's not that stable. You can't start shaking it now.
Exactly, we can't get too excited.
That's right.
Okay, so what do you say? What was better? Madrid and City, or Chelsea and Barcelona?
Well, I think
Juventus.
Well, you could have said any one of those three matches. Of course, they all had their moments. Barcelona versus Spartak Moscow was really fascinating. But for me, it was Chelsea versus Juventus because it was high intensity the whole way through. I don't think you'd expect anything different from Chelsea, given what they've done over the last 8 to 9 years in the Champions League. I think that's completely normal. I don't think you'd expect anything different from Juventus because they never know they're beaten. I think the difference between that and the Real Madrid versus Manchester City game is that probably the last 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes of that were so breathtaking that you just forget what went before, almost, which, you know, was absorbing enough, but it wasn't out of your seat great Champions League football, was it?
Okay, a lot of people said to me that they fell asleep for the first 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's harsh.
I think that is harsh because I think, despite the fact that, you know, City really never got into the game in the first 40 minutes or so, I thought the fact that Real Madrid kept coming close to opening that door, and of course you could see Maicon really suffering, and I really stood up for Maicon because I thought, like, oh, he's going to bring his experience, this is the man that won the treble, and of course he was humiliated. I thought there were a lot of errors on the part of Roberto Mancini to not put enough men on that left-hand side, knowing
give him a bit of protection.
Yeah, knowing that that's the way that, you know, Marcelo and Ronaldo work so well, and of course, so, you know, Michael Cox of Zonal Marking pointed out the fact that afterwards, on bringing on David Silva, he can go centrally. So Marcelo had all the time in the world to go down on that flank, and of course he's the one that scored it. But
now, Maicon did have this look on his face as he went off the pitch at half-time of, oh, when's this going to end?
He did look very troubled.
You have got 20 minutes off. I'm sure it'll be fine.
But did you think that he should have been played, or do you think it should have been Zabaleta?
I think maybe Zabaleta. That would have been quite a statement, I think. But I think it would have been the pragmatic move because, of course, Maicon had only made his debut at the weekend. He is in a completely new team. He's adapting to a new country, a new lifestyle as well.
But he's not finished as a defender. Surely not.
No, I don't think he is. But I think it's an enormous challenge to have to play that as just your second match, especially when you've played such a physically exacting one as Stoke away on the Saturday.
Yes, that's true. Now, what did you think of Ronaldo actually celebrating this? Of course, that took major headlines at the time in Spain, and I was like, oh, finally Ronaldo celebrated a goal.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this in the lead-up, and the goals he hasn't celebrated have been against Granada.
That's because you think he's a Granada fan.
Well, either he's a huge fan
of...
only is a huge fan of free tapas, or on the other hand, it might just be that he doesn't want to be seen as a flat-track bully. And I think if we go back to January, what was he meant to do after he scored the 5th goal in a 5-1 stuffing, you know, sort of wave a red cape and a Real Madrid flag around all four corners of the Bernabeu?
You always celebrate your goals. They're all very important. I mean, come on. If Bentner could score these, he would be celebrating all 5 of those, I assure you.
But with a certain nonchalance, I think it is fair to say.
Do you think this means that Real Madrid are back now? He came out, obviously, and said, you know, we could lose and I would be proud. This is, of course, in the Champions League game. But we cannot lose matches like we did in Sevilla and Getafe. And my happiness is not just about the 3 points. It is about the DNA of my team being back. Didn't the DNA of his team come back after the Supercoppa? and then sort of disappear again when it came to the games?
Yeah, I think what's been notable, I see what he means, because the intensity has been a little off. And I think what was notable about the Sevilla away game is they got bullied out of it, as you would have been by a Joaquin Caparrós Sevilla side if you go back to, I don't know, 2003, 2004. So it was really unusual, because Real Madrid are one of the last teams on the planet you would expect to get bullied. You look at the characters, the physical prowess of the players in that team as well as their talent, and it's something you completely don't expect to happen. But I think that they looked like they'd let it slip against Manchester City a couple of times, and then they came back. I think Mourinho's being slightly disingenuous when he says, "Oh, I would have been proud of my team even if we'd lost." It was the end that made the performance. It really was.
Well, I'm not sure about. I really don't know whether the signals are returned back, but let's have a look at what the paper said about this particular match in Spain. So that was Marca. El Madrid sí tiene equipo. So Madrid has a team. And look, both of them celebrating the same way. They have the same agent and the same celebrations.
Well, I wonder what Jorge Mendes was doing in the corporate boxes at the time.
Probably doing the same celebration.
A few carpet burns through his D&G suit, perhaps.
And then if we look at AS as well, what a terrific name for a newspaper. Remontada de leyenda. So a legendary comeback, indeed it was. Now, are you more disappointed that Man City couldn't hold on to the lead, or are you more sort of thinking that this is the brilliance of Real Madrid? They're never really ever out of it. They can score at any stage.
Yeah, I would like to be positive about Real Madrid, and I think they deserve that. The fact that
simply because of the amount of shots and possession and everything that they had in that game.
Yeah, but I think the fact that happened, and that they didn't take advantage of it, but they didn't let it grind them down. I think that was a really champion attitude. The fact that Benzema responded as well as Ronaldo responding to recent criticism, and Benzema is normally always the first pick for the big games, always ahead of Higuain. He wasn't on this occasion. He's not been great, but he's really responded. And Mourinho has really known how to get the best out of him. He was a slightly sulky kid, albeit a very talented one, when he arrived in Madrid. And it's been completely changed by Mourinho at the right times. And I think that shows that Mourinho's still got it as well as Benzema. But what I thought was interesting is Manchester City's reaction after the game. Now, everyone focused on Joe Hart and said, "Oh, we can't be losing games like that." But Edin Dzeko said completely the same thing as well. It was unacceptable. And I think it shows how far they've come and how high their ambitions are as well. So they can say, after losing at Real Madrid in a game on which they were on the back foot for most of it, I think it's fair to say that they could turn around and say, "Well, that's not good enough. We're really aiming for much higher."
Well, you see, the thing that upset me the most about Real is that, for me, I feel like they're very reliant on Xabi Alonso. I know that Ronaldo is their hero, but in terms of creativity, he is the sort of the point that joins the team together. Now, obviously, they brought in Modric. That could be another player in the middle. He can play in that role, in Ozil's role. He's very flexible. But they've decided to go into this game sort of without that creativity, again leaving Xabi Alonso with that task. There's no Ozil really until the end. Of course, there's no Sergio Ramos who can make those darting runs that he does into the centre as well. What do you make of that particular decision to drop those two creative players and Sergio Ramos?
Well, I think it's...
Because I think that it hindered them a little.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it was necessary, certainly in terms of shaking the team up after the Sevilla defeat. As I was saying, it wasn't just the fact that Real Madrid lost, it was the fact that they offered so little, and that Sevilla are, bless them, a moderate team. They're not the team they were under Juan de Ramos. They're a lot more workmanlike, and that they managed to wind up and annoy Real Madrid, get them involved in situations. It's really something you don't expect at all. So I think Mourinho had to do something. Sergio Ramos was a surprise. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think Varane showed his lack of match practice on occasions. I think he will be a very, very good player, but he hasn't been great for France under-21s recently either. So he's a bit out of nick. So I think that's part of it. But I think something had to be done with Özil too, and he's not been himself recently. And you know, there've always been these whispers in Madrid that maybe he socialises a little too much.
Yeah, he went from the boy that prayed incessantly to the boy that socialises every day now.
Yeah, well, I think Mourinho was saying, you know, come on, you've got to get your priorities right, and that's what he said. I think the day after the Sevilla game,
a couple of
a couple of them went on a I think advertising shoot or something like that, and he was like, you know, come on, we've got to work at it. I think Özil is one of the targets of that. And again, I think it's all credit to Mourinho, the way that Özil responded. He came on and he was very, very influential. But as you were saying, the adaptability of Modric, the fact that he can play deeper, as he did for Spurs, starting moves, but he can also play as a number 10. So all of a sudden, Özil's not completely indispensable. And Modric is really thriving off that advanced role as well. You know, and it's an opportunity for him to develop his game even more, to score more goals, because he didn't really score enough goals at Tottenham. Obviously, you have to take the positional switch into some sort of consideration.
He still has a habit of sort of drifting in and out of games at times, which, but you know, I don't want to focus too much on this without focusing on the fact that I wasn't very impressed with Barcelona. Now, do you think there's had to do? Oh, don't smile. I think they're wondrous. But my favourite player.
Well, they weren't last night. So.
I'm so glad about Theo, because he is my favourite player in that youth team, and I'm so glad that he's been given another shot.
But it's all been promised rather than product so far, hasn't it? And
what, with Theo?
Yeah, I think so.
How can you say that?
Quite easily. I think when he's been, of course he's young, but when he's been put in the big matches,
are you referring to the time
he's looked aesthetically very nice, but he's missed chances. There's been a feeling that he's just a little bit lackadaisical, and you know, it needs focus as well as talent. Whereas I think last night you got both of those two things. So he scored an excellent goal. He set up a goal very well for Messi, the first goal, and finally you're getting some actual product.
Okay.
You know, you don't want to just say he's a young player with talent, let's pat him on the head.
No, but I don't think
something more.
This is the man who scored 2 against Bayer Leverkusen. I understand that a lot of people refer to the time that he overwhelmed.
They were absolutely terrible.
Okay, well, they overwhelmed him. Then he overwhelmed Daniele Bonera, and then got past him, and then shot right into the side netting when he could have passed it to Messi, who was sitting in the 6-yard box. Yet, despite that, I think that there's a lot to his game that Barcelona are missing, which is that direct, that the vertical edge to the game that they don't have, and they're totally reliant on Messi. And yesterday he unleashed that talent, because otherwise it looked like they were just. Unai Emery had set up his team in so well that it was just a physical mess, really. Like Barcelona simply couldn't penetrate, and Messi couldn't get through. And if it wasn't for that pace, then I'm not sure that they would have gone through in the end. So I think Theo rescued them over there. But don't ask me. Let's ask David Cartledge. Hello, how are you? Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, okay, perfect. Now we can hear you. David is, of course, a writer for Football España, Daily Mirror, amongst other things. So what do you think about Barcelona's performance yesterday? Do you think that Theo saved them?
I think it was an interesting performance. I mean, we best to start off from the back, because that's where all the problems are existing for me. It was the first time Tito used 3 at the back with Barcelona this season. They haven't used it yet. And they look very vulnerable there at the moment. And with Piqué's injury, it just increases the problems they've got. And of course, after the Getafe game, Tito also said that he wanted to sign a centre-back, but for whatever reason, he didn't elaborate on further, that the club didn't sign one. So it is clearly a massive problem there.
Hello, David. It's Andy here. I just wanted to ask you what you made of the way Unai Emery set up Spartak. I mean, of course, he's got not a great record against Barcelona, but they were relentlessly positive throughout the game, weren't they?
Yes, they were, and it was a marked difference from when he was with Valencia. I think obviously there's that level of competitivity there, but I think we saw that little extra from Unai. I think he went for Barcelona's throat a little bit more, which was nice to see. It's something that everybody's always wanted from Unai when he plays Barcelona. He's had a degree of success when he has done that, but like you say, he still hasn't got the win, which is such a shame. But I think he's working with players at Spartak that are more suitable to the system as he wants to play. I think with Valencia, he was limited in how he could, how that system could be versatile, and how he could mould it a bit more. And I think with Spartak, he's actually got a better variation of players there.
David, I want to just ask you, just going back to the defence and Barcelona, do you think the fact that they haven't got Piqué and Puyol for a while is going to impact their games during the league, really?
Yes, I think without a doubt. I think even with even with them fit, I think it was still a problem because they're testing out these new systems, and there's I don't know, there's not much protection there at the moment in front of those players. I mean, Alex Song was brought in, and he looked so vulnerable when he switched into centre back, and he's not a centre back. I've spoke to Arsenal fans, and they say he's always looked uncomfortable there. I think if it was somebody like Mats Hummels at the back who they had, I think they'd be far more confident. He's the sort of player that they should have gone for. And obviously they wanted Thiago Silva before he went to PSG, but money. But yeah, I think they're going to have problems. But as I say, Barcelona's best way of defence is by possession. That's their best form of defence, without a doubt. And that has to come into the next couple of weeks. It really has to be really, really strong for them.
David, it was interesting hearing what you were saying about Song there, and I can't help but think that part of what they've done is to try and buy a player, as you say, who defends by possession. Do you think because they got burnt buying Chigrinsky a couple of years back, they've almost scared of buying proper defenders?
Oh, certainly. I think it's a great point. They've been burnt there very badly. Chigrinsky is to become a joke figure really with Barcelona. So, but I think right now, I mean, as much as money as Barcelona have got, they're not going to be absolutely stupid in the market, and that's from all the way down. We won't pay a lot of money for youngsters, and I know there's youngsters have gone elsewhere because Barcelona haven't put up the money, and it's happening at the top level with like the really big players as well. And Thiago Silva, they really wanted Thiago Silva, but he was just completely out of the reach, and it'll be interesting to see who they go for, because that'll be the next purchase that Barcelona make. Will definitely be a defensive one, and then they'll move on to Neymar.
I think, right, other than the fact that everyone sort of expected Real Madrid to do well, everyone expected Barcelona to do well. No one, or should I say I didn't expect Malaga to do well, not because of anything, but because with all the troubles that they've been having, financial problems, despite their good form in the league. I thought that when it came to Zenit St. Petersburg, of course their coach I'm a big fan of, and the fact that they have bought so much in attack, that they would be a little bit more interesting. What do you make of Malaga's win? Is that the biggest shock, or I lost money on this?
I think it was the standout result from the game round, from this first Champions League game round over the two nights. I think much of the credit must go to Manuel Pellegrini. He's navigated this difficult situation unbelievably well. The pressure he's been under. I mean, at one point in the summer, it looked like he was about to go, and he's turned it round brilliantly. He got them through the qualifying stages. They've started the league well, and now that win against Zenit. And there's some players putting in huge performances. Turelan has been incredible. Joaquin, I've just put an article up today about him. He's looking younger than ever. And then, of course, the absolutely fantastic Isco. He is just an absolutely outstanding player. I've spoken to you before of him, Mina. And he's one of the players who I've seen over the years in Spanish football youth levels who stood out. Along with Munir and Thiago and De La Feu. He's really stood out for me.
All right, David, we're going to have to say bye to you now, but thank you so much for your opinions, and hopefully we'll get to speak to you in the coming weeks. Thank you, that's David. I guess most people sort of forget that they still have a very good team, Malaga, and of course, despite losing Rondon and Cazorla, they still have Joaquin, they still have Camacho, who I thought did very well in defensive midfield. So I guess it's not that much of a shock. And then, of course, there's the poor Zenit defence.
That's very true. And Zenit have had a problem going away from home for a while. If you go back to their failure to qualify for the 2010-2011 Champions League when they lost the playoff away at Auxerre, that was a real shocker. And, it's a consistent problem. I think with their defence, they've obviously spent a lot of money elsewhere in the team, but they're really short of numbers there. And now Hubacan's out injured. Criscito didn't play. They're in a bit of trouble. But I think all the credit has to go to Malaga nevertheless. I still think there's something left in the group because Zenit showed that they have something attacking wise. But as you say, Malaga have got a better squad than people are ready to admit. You know, we heard David there talking about Jérémy Toulalan, who was their outstanding player last season, even better than Cazorla. He was very, very important for them. He didn't play. He was injured against Zenit, which should have been a huge loss, but they just got on with it. As you said, Nacho Camacho was excellent.
Nacho Camacho.
And, Isco was superb, and you know he's the darling of the crowd because he's a local player. He's so talented, and they could go on and bring the likes of Roque Santa Cruz off the bench. So you know there's a bit of depth there.
Well, of course, Malaga surprised us, and there's so many more surprises, exactly like Milan not being able to create anything. But we will discuss more from the Champions League after the break, so we'll see you in a few. Hello and welcome back to the World Football Show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now we finally have our third guest and arriving sort of, you know, a few minutes late. Please can we welcome Tancredi Palmeri to the show. Hello,
Buongiorno. The problem is that during the Olympics the transport were so good that now in London I feel so confident they will always deliver. It's no more like that.
It's okay. I used to use that excuse all the time when I wouldn't hand in my coursework on time. But let's move on and let's talk about for me, probably one of the dullest matches of the Champions League, and one that I was so disappointed to watch, simply because I think Milan are capable of so much more. What's going on, guys? I mean, 0-0 against Anderlecht. This was meant to be the place that they collected a win for sure. I mean, this is the side that came so close to defeating Barcelona last season, and I know that they lost a lot of great players and a lot of veterans and a lot of experience, but surely they're better than at least managing a goal at home.
But given those two defeats at the start of the Serie A season, maybe Allegri will look back at this point as a 0.1 later in the group, perhaps, because I think it is going to be a tight group. Zenit have shown they've got some stuff to work on, and I think if you put it into context, the fact that Milan could have been in a lot of trouble in the first half. Abbiati made a couple of decent saves. Anderlecht made all the running. And Anderlecht have got a lot of experienced players. So I think they smelt a bit of weakness in Milan and they went for it.
There is a point in which it's not that I disagree, just that it's to be clear. You said Allegri will look back at this as the 0.1. We'll have
I said
time,
might.
Might. We'll have Allegri time to look back at this point of 0.1.
Yes.
Because what happened is this. There was a phone call in the night between Silvio Berlusconi and the CEO, Adriano Galliani. We have to remind that Allegri is totally the pick of Adriano Galliani, the choice of him, protected, defended by Galliani.
And Berlusconi wanted him out.
Never. It's not like this. It's not the choice of Berlusconi. And Berlusconi was away from the Milan's business properly for the last years. So he's starting to get back now. Berlusconi was absolutely mad about Allegri, not about Galliani.
Surely when you look at the choices of the team, you understand.
For 30 years, these guys have been working together 30 years, so will never be mad at Galliani. They are
yes,
friends.
Of course, I know.
And was totally mad and said, let's put him out. And Galliani asked, I should remind another thing. Before Atalanta's game that they lost last Sunday, they fixed a check-up deadline about Allegri for the 7th of October, when there will be the Milan derby. So was like, let's see on the night of 7th of October if it is the case to go on with him or not. Berlusconi was mad. Berlusconi said, let's put him out. Doesn't make any sense anymore. Galliani said, one chance more. He said, I put my face in this. Please, one chance more. On Sunday against Udinese. If Milan will fail again against Udinese, 90% Allegri will be out. There are voices who could be to replace him. Still, nothing is sure. The first possibility, first chance, is Mauro Tassotti, his assistant, the one that was the assistant of Carlo Ancelotti. But 2 years ago, when Ancelotti tossed it back to Milan and Milan decided to pick Leonardo, Tassotti was already asked to take the Milan job, and he said, I don't feel I can handle that responsibility. So it would be strange that he would take that responsibility now. Second option, and this would be unbelievable, is Inzaghi with his Tassotti assistant. Yeah, Inzaghi just had, I'm telling you, it's really possible. Okay. Inzaghi just had two games with Academy, and there is a third option, but today his agent said that we still haven't been in contact, but we would consider that, and that would be Rafa Benitez.
Well, probably from all those three, I'd go for Rafa Benitez because at least on that level, I think that he could manage. Although I actually had Billy Costa Curta throwing his name into the ring, going, "I'd love it if I was offered the job."
You want Costa Curta on the catwalk, not on the bench.
Oh, I would love to see Costa Curta on there. Just another handsome Italian coach on the sidelines. But let's talk about the game. Are we annoyed with Allegri, or do we think that there's a sort of a shock going on, a psychological block going on with Milan? Now, obviously, they've lost all their best players. I personally think that the midfielders that they do have in Nocerino, and I'm sure that you don't agree with me on this, but Nocerino and Kevin Prince Boateng, for me, have never been wonderful midfielders. You put them in a good midfield, they will perform well. That's what happens. You know, when you are a good midfielder, you'll do well with those that are around you that are even better. But if you are not by yourself someone that can make the difference, and none of their midfielders, in my opinion, barring perhaps Montolivo, can really make the difference. And they suffered. But my question is, why would you put out a team where Pazzini is the man on top, and the rest of it, it's a purely defensive side?
I understand what you say. I don't agree with everything, but basically I do with a large part. But when we talk about Allegri, just to remind to people, we should start from one point. This is the person that said, that had the face to say, in my system of playing, I prefer to have Mark van Bommel in the center of the midfield in place of Andrea Pirlo. We can get rid of Andrea Pirlo.
Yes.
I mean, everything starts from there.
Yes.
When we talk about tactics, when we talk about Allegri,
but he wanted Montolivo now because he wanted him to sit in front of
It's not that he wanted Montolivo. It's that Montolivo was the good chance to sign him, free agent, and Allegri said,
but
yes,
he did
Montolivo,
want a playmaker now. I think he's realised the error of his
after
ways.
last year, where Ibrahimovic almost did even goalkeeping because he was doing everything. Nocerino scored 10 goals, if I'm not mistaken, because Ibrahimovic was downloading a lot of assists. Me too, I would score, and not with my feet if Ibrahimovic would give me assists. But I've been watching, I don't know how many times, live at San Siro, Allegri for 2 years. I couldn't spot, except in some 3 or 4 games, his touch, his tactical touch, or maybe I could spot his tactical touch, in 2 years. Never. He was always on the shoulders of Ibrahimovic. Now, he said last Saturday night, after losing against Atalanta, he said these words: we should understand now that we don't have anymore some kind of players that can let us win the game by himself. Oh, come on! You realize just now? You waited 2 years. I mean, when you have Ibrahimovic, the good thing is that he can give you points while you build up your game. He didn't do nothing for 2 years. And now this is the reward.
So you basically agree with his sacking?
I was agreeing with him sacking already 1 year and a half ago.
Ah, okay. Well, I've never really been a big fan of Allegri anyway. But let's go on from sad news to triumphant news. This is, of course, I'm referring to Juventus's great draw. Today I got a little carried away on Twitter and called it a wonderful win. But that's what it felt like, because they went 2-0 down in Stamford Bridge, honestly, one of the most hostile grounds, to then collect a point from 2 mistakes, I would guess, on Chelsea's behalf. Was that, do Juventus belong in the Champions League?
Well, I think they've shown that they do, but I think what's the most interesting thing, seeing as they've been out of the Champions League for a while, is that they brought that intensity from Serie A and brought it to one of the top Premier League teams, to the European champions. That is absolutely extraordinary, I think.
I think it's exactly the game I was expecting from Juventus, with the bonus and the malus, the minus and the plus. Not because I said before the game would be a draw with goals and with a lot of entertainment. It is because all the pace, all the runs, all the dynamics, a really lively game of Juventus was there in Stamford Bridge. But with the minus also, that you can't spot in the box someone doing the movement that you need from a forward to convert, to finish your game.
Yes.
And there is one, we watched together and we weren't persuaded at all when Quagliarella was placed in, the guy that scored the equalizer. But there is one reason why Quagliarella scored. For all the game, we saw from the 2 forward up in front, Vucinic and Giovinco, if we can call them forward, always they were doing the movements, the cut in. The first time that someone did the cut-out going from outside the box and then coming in, wow, the Chelsea defense was surprised, and finally they have a real chance in the box, because they could have a lot of chance, but always they were approaching the side of the box.
Always going via funnel almost through the centre.
If they would be just not a Van Persie, but not even a Bentner. Someone like that. Yesterday, Juventus would ship the 3 points.
Yes, I definitely think that the fact that they don't have that striker, and you can see Giovinco is struggling, you know, he may have talent, and I don't deny that for a second, but he doesn't have the physical stature to play at this level, in my humble opinion.
You know, sometimes it's not even a matter of physical, because if we look at Barcelona, well...
it doesn't matter about being small. That's not the question.
Give a time. Giovinco, you can drop him in Stamford Bridge and pretend that he will already perform.
No, I mean, he performed really well in Stamford Bridge the last time that Juventus were there. And he was, of course, still at that time a Juventus player. He's still inconsistent, and I understand that a question of time, but I do think that at this age he should be sort of a little bit higher than where he is.
Yeah, but I don't mean age. I mean a past of performing, of playing at this level in Europe. You could spot that even in other players that have more experience than Giovinco, in the first 20 minutes, there was a huge tension for the stage where they were performing.
I don't think that they expected it to be at the pace that it was, but what we needed as well was the fact that, you know, Oscar obviously man-marked Pirlo so well, and it was time for Vidal and Marquisio to take on that responsibility and understand, well, listen, we can't depend on Pirlo, so we're going to have to make those runs into the box. And Marquisio, it took him a while to get into the game, but then he did, and of course he was the man that delivered the 2 delightful assists. But do you think that with the lack of strikers that they are, that this midfield is good enough to perhaps take them far?
Well, there's a lot of pressure on the midfield to score goals. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah.
And you saw the chances they had when it was 0-0. You know,
we
talk about the comeback. We can almost forget that bit. But I know you don't really want to talk about him because you're being a bit of a grouch about it. But Oscar, I think the fact that you were saying there that he was meant to be marking Pirlo as well, I think that's really interesting because he's become such an important player to Brazil already. And you look at the ease with which he adapted to Chelsea, and that's because he's such an incredibly versatile player already at an early age. So we were talking about Modric before, can play as a 10, or he can play deep, more in the first stage of construction of the game, and Oscar can do that, and that's why he's going to be such an important player for them in the Champions League.
Oh, I agree. I think that what do you think about the second goal? Do you think that he knew exactly what he was doing and that it was going to go in, or do you think he was hoping for the best?
Well, I think it's both. I mean, he wanted to do that and hoping that it would be good. I mean, it's not even...
How confident do you think he thought of actually managing that?
No, I think he absolutely went to put the ball, we call that in Italy the 7. Absolutely, he went for that, hoping that he would go, because you can try that in a game in a second, like he did, and then you can just shoot the ball in the space. But I think that was exactly the kind of bending that he wanted. It wasn't something like, oh, okay, I'll just close my eyes.
And Quagliarella tried to copy that a little with his turnaround.
And he killed someone in the stand.
Hey, I thought Quagliarella was, for all what I said to him, of course, I went straight on Twitter going, really, Quagliarella? And then he scores, and I thought, if there's ever a time that someone just, you know, laughed in the face of my tweet. But do you think that the fact that they didn't have Conte is going to be a problem for them as well?
Well, yes, but there are one thing that I have to say about that. I do think that having Conte there on the bench would be better.
Although the person he was sitting next to was on the phone the whole time.
Indeed. But actually, there is an important update of that. I mean, this could be already like past story. Because a few minutes before we were on air, this is still an unknown news. It's a very strong rumor.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a Sports Tonight exclusive.
It's a very, very strong rumor. So I'm reporting as rumors. So it's not a news, nothing official. But I cross-confirmed that around other colleagues. And within 10 days, today is 19, within 10 days, Antonio Conte could be called again by the prosecutor of Bari to be questioned again, so far as a witness. Let's explain why this news could be extremely important. Antonio Conte has been sentenced to 10 months ban by the prosecutor of Cremona, where the first match fixing for illegal betting trial was going on. This one in Bari is a second one. It is investigation over match fixing that was going on in Bari, also during the time where he was manager there in Bari. He is not there investigated. He has been questioned as a witness 10 days ago in secret. In secret, wasn't released to the public. It just came out 5 days after this news. So he was questioned for 4 hours. And it is extremely unusual that after 4 hours of questioning, after 20 days, he would be called again by the prosecutor to listen to him again. It is extremely unusual. So far, he's just a witness, and this is not even being confirmed, even if it's a strong rumor. But if confirmed, and if it would be like that, it could bring something more heavy. Of course, so far a witness, so far nothing. But if this is confirmed, could bring something more. And I hope no, honestly.
Right. Well, of course, it never looks like it's good news for Juventus, but that is where we're going to leave it off now. We'll be back with you in a couple of minutes for more action from the Champions League. We'll see you then. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. Now, if you thought Juventus had problems, then France have even bigger problems, as Lille lost to Bate Borisov. And, of course, so did Montpellier to Arsenal, although I think they at least gave it a go. However, they do have PSG, who, of course, were in thrilling form with a 4-1 victory that not even I would have ever imagined would happen. But let's go straight to our correspondent, Jonathan Johnson, who is going to tell us all about France. Can you hear me, Jonathan?
Yes, I can. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, I'm fine, thank you. All the better after that fantastic midweek result for PSG, as you were just mentioning.
Yeah, I can imagine, actually. So can you tell us quickly about what exactly happened to Lille? I mean, did anyone expect this?
No, I don't think anybody expected it. It was a surprise result. I mean, Bate Borisov have been in the Champions League now for a couple of years, but I don't think they'd ever won a game before last night. So going into the game, they had a lot to prove. Quite a few of these players had come with the Belarusian national team the week before to play France in Paris. Probably felt a little hard done by because they put in a good performance there. So I think they had a lot of motivation going into this game, and they really just blew Lille away. I think the problem is, and it was the same with Lille last season when they played their first Champions League game against CSKA Moscow. They went into the match with an attitude where they sort of expected to get the win, and sort of thought the game was half won before they even had to kick a ball. And I think Borisov turned up, were very motivated, played some very good football, took the chances that they had when they came their way, and by half-time, Lille were out of the game and had no answer, really.
Hi, Jonathan. 2 years ago, I was at San Siro for Inter Lille, and I spoke with Aimé Jacquet after the game. And, well, for me, it was a natural. I was proud that he was agreeing with me. We both agree that the Garcia attitude with the game and with the campaign was like, I would say, too open. I would say, like, not smart enough to understand the moment in which defending, in which just give time to the game. I rewatched part of the game this morning, and looked to me something like he didn't learn the lesson in these 2 years.
No, I think Rudy Garcia is very stubborn when it comes to his team selections. The way that he likes his team to play, he has a very specific game plan in mind, and sometimes I think it's fair to criticise him and say that there is quite often no sort of plan B, no backup, and if the first plan is not working, then there's no second plan to fall back on. And I think once a team is able to disrupt Lille's strong passing, possession-based game that they have, then it's quite easy to beat them.
Right. Okay.
Especially in Europe.
Yeah.
Okay. So Lille perhaps underperformed, but are people now talking about PSG being one of the greatest teams in France we've ever seen now, and after that great win over in the Champions League?
I don't think people are talking about PSG as a potentially great team just yet. I mean, yes, on paper, I think this is one of the strongest teams French domestic football, at least, has seen in a long, long time. But I think PSG, the club, view the result against Dynamo Kiev in midweek as a message really to their European rivals to show that it is a serious project. The club has serious ambitions and really wants to become a top player, a top club within Europe and a real player when it comes to these big competitions. And I think now with PSG having brought in the likes of Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Thiago Silva, Thiago Motta, you have three players there in particular who have experience at the very highest level, have gotten to the latter stages of the Champions League, and in Thiago Motta's case actually gone and won the Champions League as well. And that experience was missing from the team at the very beginning of the Qatar sports investment era. And now that they have this big match experience in some players, I think they're very confident that they can go a long way in this Champions League.
Hello, Jonathan. It's Andy. At the start of the season, when Ibrahimovic signed, in the press conference, Nasser Al-Khelaifi, Leonardo, they weren't even talking about winning Ligue 1. They were talking about the Champions League. Now, there seemed to be a feeling, and I think this is the best PSG have played this season, and of course, Dinamo have their frailties, particularly at the back. But Pastore just seemed liberated. He complains that when he's in France, and he was talking to Angel Capper about this, his old coach in Argentina a while back, how he feels restricted in France, constricted by the game. Whereas he seemed to have this sort of liberty in the Champions League that he doesn't have in the domestic game. Do you think this is the case for a couple of their other players, because they looked a lot more comfortable in the European stage?
Yeah, I think some of the more creative and attacking players definitely feel that way. I mean, what people have to bear in mind is France is a very difficult league to participate in. A lot of the teams are very strong defensively, and they're very, very difficult to break down. From the top of the table to the bottom, every team is very physical. And so for a player like Pastore, who, with his waif-like physique, he's not the strongest of players. So when he's challenged physically on and off the ball, he can struggle with that sometimes. So yeah, I think I'd agree with his point of view that he sort of feels more free to express himself in European football. And then going back to the point that you made about Zlatan Ibrahimovic's unveiling, I mean, I think that it's not assumed that PSG will win Liga, because the competition is not something that can just be won by throwing a lot of money at the team. It's a very difficult competition, and every game is not as one-sided as sometimes it may seem on paper. But I think the club definitely have more of a long-term ambition to become important in European terms as opposed to just domestic terms.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. I know that we made you wait a long time before we could have you on the show, but thank you so much for your input. We will hopefully catch you in the next few weeks to tell us a little bit more about what's going on in France. But we have to go straight to a break. Before that, I'd just like to say well done to Verratti. I thought he did wonderfully. And then we'll see you after the break to discuss some odd events going on with Hanover. See you in a bit. Hello and welcome back to the World of Football show here on Sports Tonight Live. I'm Mina Rzouki and I'm still joined by Tancredi Palmeri and of course Andy Brassell. Now here's a very interesting story. Someone who wasn't present at the Genoa-Juventus match in their own stadium was, of course, the president of Genoa, Enrico Preziosi. Now, because he's serving a 6-month ban, the states from a long time ago, he wasn't able to join it.
So beautiful.
And he sent, well, we don't know what's happened, but some people are suggesting that he sent a cardboard cutout of himself so that he would still look like he was in the stadium. This is, ladies and gentlemen, what happens in Serie A. Other people say that it was just brought in as a joke. We don't know what the real story is. What do you think? Do you think it was him?
Usually it's not that ironic, Preziosi. So, but you know,
this is not Di Laurenti.
but you know, Preziosi is the tycoon of toys in Italy. So
yeah.
Might be that some creative guy suggested.
It's a wonderful story, but and even one that is more unusual, let's say, is Hanover's Hushti. Now, he celebrated his injury time winner against Werder Bremen, and in doing so, he received 2 yellow cards, and one for leaving the pitch and the other for removing his shirt.
In the same action, we should add.
In the same action, yes. This one
action. It's got a very
nice
scissor kick to win the game in the final minute. 1 card for taking off the shirt, and he still had it in his hand, and he jumped into the crowd. The crowd were all very respectful. No one tried to take the shirt from him, which must have been quite tempting. If you think, you know, you go all over the world and everyone has a little handwritten thing saying, Ronaldo, make me happy and give me your shirt, and all that sort of stuff. But he was gutted, and it's a big deal for Szabolcs because he was a cult hero at Hanover before. He went off to Zenit St. Petersburg for 3 years, and he's just rejoined. He's just making his comeback. He wasn't playing very much, especially in the last period at Zenit. So he scored the first goal, he set up the second, and then after they lost the 2-goal lead, he scored the winner in the last minute, full of emotion. And when he got sent off, he was gutted. He was absolutely gutted.
So
Mirka Slomka the coach had to come out and give him a cuddle. One of the other subs came up and gave him a cuddle.
But he didn't know the rules. How could you not know the rules?
Okay, I used to be referee just in amateur league in Italy. But I had my professors, my teachers were the same that Collina had and Rizzoli had. So I honestly, the school was fantastic.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and
you could have been a little Collina. Okay,
yes,
sorry.
indeed. You see that I'm almost on the way. So the rule has slightly changed because before, if you would run to the crowd, for example, in the stadium where there is the athletic track.
Well, you have to be very fit for a start.
In Italy they do all the time, and you would be booked. You get a yellow card for that. Now you don't get any more yellow card for that. You will get it if you just climb the fences, something like that, and you do that. Okay. Still, if we stand to the rules, yes, there should be the yellow card. But there is one reason why it's never happening like that. My professors that were absolutely damn excellent professors. They were telling me, you just have to use the rules. But in a situation like this, you have to use the good sense. The good sense is not the one that if there is a red card to the goalkeeper, there's a red card, and the team is already losing 3-0, and you're giving the penalty, so you have to give also, you don't have to give the red card, because it's deserved, it's the last man. It is something that is connected with the game. But this time, for God's sake. Oh, come on. Seriously? You want to do this? This is the action,
So you're
Mina.
blaming the referee?
Look, yeah, but this is... look, Mina. This is the action. And I give you even the red card. Seriously? You want to look
but
so
you're
ridiculous?
blaming the referee.
Yeah, I'm blaming the referee.
Okay, let me just...
It was beyond letter of the law, I think.
No, but come on. He admitted, the referee admitted the decision had troubled him, and he said it hurt me, but added that the rule book left him little choice. As the executive, I need to do this. I don't have any other option. But he admitted that it really pained him. I actually feel sorry for him because you've got to follow the rules.
No.
If you...
I think as well there has to be a degree of responsibility with the player because I think that they kind of know the rules. So I remember actually, of course, Lyon are making a return to the Europa League later. They'll be playing Sparta Prague. Last time they played Sparta Prague, they won 5-0 at Jurland. When Brian Bergeny, the midfielder, scored the 5th goal, he took his shirt off and had another absolutely identical underneath.
Yeah, and that actually...
But he still got booked.
Yeah, for that you have to... Because...
Why? That's a very creative way of finding
it is creative,
into something.
Because you are booked, not because on your chest there is no more the proper shirt. You are booked for the act of taking off the shirt. So...
Why is that a booking?
Because, well, the reason is...
It's disturbing the women in the crowd?
No, the reason is why... at the beginning, it was because was believed to be something that is mis of respect for the others. Then is a political decision because otherwise people will start to show a political sign or some whatever. So you just don't take off the shoes.
Talking to women. Or anyone else for that matter. This is something that Balotelli loves to do. But sadly, that is all we have time for on the World Football Show for today. Can I please thank my co-hosts or pundits or whatever you'd like to call yourselves. My friends, my chums, Angie Brassel and of course Tancredi Palmeri. Thank you so much for joining me. Do join us next week, sort of same time, same place and the same football chat. See you then. Take care.